There are lots of things we say about behaviorally challenging kids that I find aren't true. Manipulative, attention-seeking, coercive, unmotivated, limit testing, blah, blah, blah. What's interesting about this is that we are instead viewing the kid through the prism of lagging skills. And you all have had neuropsych testing done on Joshua. Mm-hmm. The testing documents that he's lacking some skills. Many people say, isn't that kind of negative? Well, lagging skills is a lot better than some other things that could be said about Joshua, and that maybe you've heard said about Joshua. We're not going to spend a ton of time on that. How old is he?
He's 10 and a half.
10 and a half. And we don't necessarily have to say what school he goes to, because I'd rather, but is it public education?
Yes, it is.
Got it.
Specialized school.
Specialized public school.
Yes.
Yes.
Got it. And what grade is he officially going into in the fall?
Fourth. Yeah.
Fourth. And to what degree have you all had good and bad experiences with schools as it relates to Joshua?
I think Joshua's been a big puzzle to them.
Okay.
It's been a big puzzle. He has not conformed to or made progress with their programming, as you know they see would work, and he's not made any progress. He's behind scholastically, and I've found that communication isn't always up front.
Between you and the school?
Yes. Yes. I could give examples as they were using the seclusion room for a few months without telling me.
That's something you'd want to know?
Yes.
And was he frequenting the exclusion room?
Yes. Yes, like weekly or multiple
Weekly.
times a week.
Okay.
Yes.
So the fact that you said the word conform, and the fact that you said that they don't quite understand him, I don't remember what your exact words were, but I think you said they don't get him. He's still
Right.
puzzled,
A
I think
puzzle.
you said, right?
A puzzle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Puzzles end up in seclusion rooms a lot. To sort of tease apart the puzzle, I find that the best prism through which to view kids who are having difficulty is the skills they're lacking and the expectations they're having difficulty meeting. Then there's no puzzle, right? So it is very often the case that parents will come in, or school staff will say, he's a puzzle. That's almost always a sign that they haven't yet figured out what the kid's lagging skills and unmet expectations are, right? I come across many former puzzles, but once we figure that stuff out, they're not a puzzle anymore. We have the information we need. I'm betting that some diagnostic labels have been applied to Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear them.
The list keeps getting longer every year.
Well, when puzzles don't get unpuzzled, the list of diagnostic categories get longer. But what do we got?
Initially it was POD, NOS.
PDD.
PDD.
NOS.
Okay.
And then autism,
Okay, so he's progressed to autism.
anxiety, ADHD.
Okay.
Let's see, ruling out tic disorder, possibly ruling out autism.
Well, they got him as autistic.
Right, but now we're maybe ruling that out.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's another interesting thing. Those labels might provide us with a little bit of information, but we don't want to spend the vast majority of our time figuring out what category Joshua fits into, okay? So you could spend most of his childhood trying to get a definitive, precise answer on autistic versus non-autistic. The reality is, kids, what I'd rather know is what skills he's lacking. Then I don't got to worry about autistic or non-autistic. Then the only time I got to worry about it is if the school system wants me to label him so that he can access certain programming,
Sure.
or if there is some good, helpful reason to label. Some parents who I've worked with have found a label to be useful because, number one, it tells them certifiably there's something interesting about our child. My bet is that you guys don't need certification on that. You already think Joshua's interesting. Yes?
Yes.
And it also sometimes leads them to literature that they can read, right? And beyond that, I don't feel great need to put a rubber stamp on Joshua's head and say certified, right? We will know much more about him if we know what his lagging skills and unmet expectations are than any label could possibly tell us. Let me ask you about some of these lagging skills. And I'm just going to go in order
Sure.
on your list, okay? Would you say that Joshua has difficulty handling transitions, shifting from one mindset or task to another?
Absolutely.
Good.
Number one,
So
yeah.
what you're about to see me do is extremely difficult. I'm going to go like this. I checked it off. Okay? Do you have that one checked off?
I do.
Yes.
Checking off a lagging skill is the easiest part of doing this instrument. But now comes the hard part. I'm not going to go down the entire list of lagging skills first. The minute I hit upon a lagging skill, that I've checked off, I'm now going to ask, can you give me some examples of times when Joshua is having difficulty making transitions? What I'm looking for here are examples of expectations Josh is having difficulty meeting that spring to mind when you think of him having difficulty making transitions.
Moving from a preferred activity to a chore.
Got it.
Yeah.
So now you're going to see me moving from a preferred activity to a chore is a theory. That's the preferred activity part. And it's also what I call clumped, meaning we are now referring to many, many different possibilities. And what I want to do is make it more specific, right? So I'm going to use strategy number one. Like what? Like what preferred activity to what other preferred activity? To what other activity?
Sure. Looking at his photo album, that's a new thing that he's very interested in. Having to go pick up the eggs from the chickens.
Moving from looking at photo album to picking up eggs. You apparently have your
Yes.
own chickens.
Yes.
Nice. I know somebody who just lost all their chickens, probably to a weasel.
We
Yeah.
lost one this
We
weekend.
lost one this weekend.
Apparently weasels are in season.
Yes.
That's a very good one,
Mhm.
right? And here's how I'm going to word it. Difficulty moving from looking at photo album to picking up eggs. Good? Is picking up eggs something he hates?
No.
It's not on top of his list of things to do.
Yeah.
But looking at the photo album is something he
Yes.
likes doing.
Yes.
What I want to get rid of here is the preferred to non-preferred. First of all, it's too vague. And secondly, I've worked with a lot of kids who had difficulty moving from preferred to preferred
That's true too.
and from unpreferred to unpreferred.
That's true too.
So while I frequently come across the theory that it's preferred to less preferred, I frequently find that that's actually not true. And we'd rather be more specific anyways.
Sure.
Give me some other ones that spring to mind when you think of him having difficulty making transitions.
Leaving his one small group of friends he meets with once a week, is having to say goodbye to them.
And how is he meeting with them? In like a
Goes to
friendship
their
group?
house and
Okay.
has play time with them.
Difficulty saying goodbye to his friends when it's time to go.
Home.
Home. Yeah.
Difficulty saying goodbye. Now here's the interesting about that. I'll finish writing it, but to friends when time to go home. What's the expectation there? Is it saying goodbye, or do you not care if he says goodbye? Is it more that he's having difficulty leaving his friends when it's time to go home?
Difficulty leaving.
Yeah.
As you're going to see, I'm a man of precision. By the way, why I'm a man of precision? Because the wording that we use in how we write the unsolved problem is going to translate directly into the words that we use when it comes time to solve that problem together with Joshua. And it's going to sound something like this. Joshua, and this is, notice we're not doing this in the heat of the moment. We don't want to do this when he's having difficulty leaving. We want to do this way before he's having difficulty leaving, because when he's having difficulty leaving, we're adding heat and rush to the mix. We'd much rather do this proactively. Here's the other good news. The fact that we're saying that this is difficult tells us that it's predictable. You guys already know that when it's time for Josh to leave his friends and go home, you have not 100% likelihood, although you might think it's 100%, it could be 100%. It may not be 100%, but you have a very increased likelihood that that's going to be difficult for Joshua. Yes? That makes it predictable. 100% isn't what makes it predictable. An increased likelihood is what makes it predictable. Yes? Any other transitions that spring to, any other expectations that he's having difficulty meeting that spring to mind when you think of transitions?
Going to bed at night.
Thank you. He has difficulty going to bed at night?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
He wants to stay up all hours of the night and watch movies or just hang out with us. But
And is there an expectation on bedtime in terms of timing?
yeah, 8 o'clock. We try to do 8 o'clock.
I'm going to add that
Yep.
at 8 p.m. So the expectation is that Josh will go to bed at 8 p.m. Is the expectation, and so the expectation is that he'll stay in bed and go to sleep?
Mhm.
Is he still awake at 10 p.m.?
Not usually. He
Yeah.
usually, once he's in bed,
Yes.
He goes.
goes to sleep, yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Will he stay in bed? Is it getting him to the bedroom,
Usually.
or is it getting him to stay in the bed? Or both?
Usually getting him into the bed is 95% of the...
Problem.
Yeah.
So so is it something that he's doing that you're having trouble extracting him from, or are you able to get him to the bedroom, but getting him to actually get in the bed is the hard part, or both?
Getting him in. He'll say, "Oh, I want to snuggle for another 5 minutes," and a deal,
Where's the snuggling taking place?
at the couch usually.
Got it.
Yeah.
So difficulty ending the snuggling.
Yes.
Is that what we're usually doing?
Yeah.
Or the story time, or the,
Ending
whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
snuggling or story time, and getting into bed at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Fair?
Mhm.
Good. Any others spring to mind on difficulty making transitions?
I guess those would represent, other things that we've done. We've had to leave. If we were at, say, the library, you have to leave the library, it's time to go home. It kind of melds into time awareness, so he does not know how to tell time. So that goes down to the
Yes,
time piece.
we're getting there.
Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing. Well, multiple lagging skills could contribute to the same unsolved problem. The reality is, we're actually not going to know what's hard for Joshua about these different unsolved problems till we ask him. Right now, I'm actually content knowing it does appear that Josh has difficulty making transitions and shifting from one mindset or task to another. I'm confident about that, right? But plus, we checked it off, right? And I'm very confident that he often enough has difficulty with these 3 unsolved problems that we've written in, right? Difficulty, let's see if I can read my own writing. Difficulty, oh boy, moving from looking at the photo album to picking up eggs. Difficulty leaving his friends when it's time to go home. Difficulty ending the snuggling and story time and getting into bed at 8 p.m. Yes? These are expectations that you have that he's having difficulty meeting. I'm confident about all of them. But here's what's going to happen. When we say to Joshua, I've noticed that you're having difficulty moving from looking at the photo album to picking up eggs. What's up? He is not going to say, I'm having difficulty making transitions. Right?
No.
It's not happening.
No.
And so it's good for us to know he's lacking these skills, and it's good for us to know these are the problems we need to be working on with him. But the lagging skill doesn't tell the whole tale. It's just that we're thinking of these unsolved problems as we're thinking of these lagging skills, right? And there's clearly a connection between them, but in ways that are not as precise as it might seem. The reason I'm mentioning that is that I don't know if time is why he's having difficulty doing this stuff. Want to know when I'll know? When I ask Joshua. That's when it all really starts to unfold, right? For the time being, I'm glad to know that he's having difficulty making transitions. That fills him out for me. And I'm glad to know that apparently that lagging skill is making these expectations hard for him to meet. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to the next one. Difficulty doing things in a logical sequence or prescribed order.
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
I just did the easy part. Now the hard part. What expectations spring to mind when you think of Joshua having difficulty doing things in a logical sequence or prescribed order?
Oh, picking up his dish from the dinner table and putting it in the trash, scraping the foot off in the trash and putting it in the dishwasher or the sink.
Spectacular. Difficulty taking plate to trash and dishwasher after dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing that you can take more than one thing at a time. You know, the fork can go on the plate. You don't have to take the plate over and then kind of walk around in space. And Joshua get the fork and get it's like, just scoop it all up. Just take it all with you.
Now let me ask, how important is you that he scoop it, because that's an expectation, versus just getting it done?
Would be fine.
Got
That
it.
would be fine.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Any other expectations that spring to mind when you think of difficulty doing things in a logical sequence or prescribed order?
One of his chores is just to bring down his dirty clothes. He doesn't do it on his own. I mean, we have to verbally tell him, but his dirty clothes are in his closet in a blue bucket.
And what is he supposed to do with them?
And go up, bring them downstairs to the basement. Just put them in the basement
Difficulty
by the
bringing
washing machine.
dirty clothes to the basement to be washed. Yes?
If the clothes are on the floor, he'll say, I don't see any clothes. I mean, he doesn't see them in the bucket, but they're on the floor.
Yeah.
So then you'll have to say, well, look around, you know, and I don't see any.
Got it. But I get what he's doing, but it sounds like what he's having difficulty doing is getting the clothes that are dirty
Yep.
In the
to
bucket,
the basement.
and then bring them down.
Got it.
Yep.
So he's also having difficulty putting the clothes in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Difficulty putting dirty clothes in the bucket. Yes?
Mhm.
Two separate ones. So just split that. Okay? I'm making two out of it instead of one, right? Dirty clothes is the common denominator, but there are two aspects of dirty clothes that he's having difficulty with. And I don't know if he's having difficulty with those two aspects of dirty clothes for the exact same reason, so I'm splitting them.
Okay.
Good?
Sure.
We would want to talk with him about them separately.
Okay.
Any others that spring to mind on difficulty doing things in a logical sequence or prescribed order?
I can't think of anything right now.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Difficulty persisting on challenging or tedious tasks.
Oh yes, gives
Yep.
up.
Yep.
Gives up.
Like what? I get a feeling this is going to be a long list.
Yeah, any little homework he brings home, trying to get him to do his homework. You know, he's, oh, let me do one line of words and I'll take a break and come back to it maybe.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, and I shouldn't, that the difficulty, and so tell me if I'm wrong, that the difficulty persisting cuts across multiple homework assignments?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm also assuming he's not in school right now.
He is.
He is in school right
He
now.
is.
See what happens when
Yeah.
you assume? What I would want to do is be very specific about the homework assignments he's having difficulty persisting on.
Although right now in this particular school, right
Yes.
now, he's not getting any homework.
None.
He is not getting
So
homework.
this is not an unsolved problem right now.
Not right now.
Got it. I'm not going to write it in then.
Okay.
If we started with homework, then we went to a particular to writing, right? What I would do is I would split it into the multiple different homework assignments he's having difficulty doing. But if he's not getting any homework right now, we can blow past that one, right? Besides homework, any other things that he's having difficulty persisting on that are challenging and tedious?
I would say even just getting dressed.
Yeah, definitely.
Just getting dressed in the morning. I'll ask him to get dressed,
Put his
and
socks on.
he'll bring up a subject. He'll start talking about something. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we're not going to talk about this now. We'll talk about it after you get dressed.
Right.
You need to get dressed first. And then, he'll start doing that. Oh, I want to ask you about, and he'll just try to engage me in conversation. And then he stops getting dressed.
So is the difficulty that he's having difficulty getting dressed, or is it that he's having difficulty getting dressed on a certain timeline? Like, if he's able to, I'm wondering if you're okay with him taking a break if he's ultimately dressed by a certain time, or if you left him to his own devices, would he simply not get dressed?
I don't think I've let him, I don't think I've ever found out, but I'm afraid that would
Yeah.
be the case.
Yes, yeah.
That he would not
Walk
get
around with his
dressed.
underwear on all day.
Got it.
Right.
But do you have a certain expectation for how quickly getting dressed should happen?
I
What's
do.
the timeline here? What is that?
Shorts and a t-shirt, I think 5 minutes.
Got it. Difficulty getting dressed in the morning in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Because the bus is coming, he has to get to school.
Yeah,
so-
Got it.
the bus picks him up at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Any other things that he's having difficulty with that spring to mind on difficulty persisting on challenging or tedious tasks?
Just remembering to,
Yeah.
I'll ask him to take his lunchbox out of his backpack. Pull all the stuff out of it
When he comes home.
when he comes home from school.
Is it difficulty taking the lunchbox out of his backpack and or difficulty taking the stuff out of the lunchbox? Is it both?
It's not physically difficult, it's difficult.
I'm just saying,
I
are
just
those
wanted
two
to make sure.
are those two
Yes.
different expectations?
Yeah.
So difficulty taking lunchbox out of backpack after school,
Mhm.
and difficulty taking things out of lunchbox. Yes?
Mhm.
Others? Once again, we're on difficulty persisting on challenging or tedious tasks.
Well, going to the bathroom sometimes, cleaning himself after the bathroom, he seems to be very,
Nonchalant.
yeah, I could say that.
Difficulty wiping himself
Yes.
after going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that the wiping part is on the moving of bowels.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Others related to difficulty persisting on challenging or tedious tasks. Actually, I think I repeated the other one.
Mhm.
Difficulty persisting on challenging or tedious tasks, although that could be both of those anyways.
Can't think of
Can't think
anything.
right now.
Yeah.
Good. By the way, the reason I call these unsolved problems is because they need to be solved. The fact that he's still having difficulty with these things only tells us one thing. They're not solved yet, right? When does challenging behavior kick in? When a kid is having difficulty meeting an expectation and we are trying very hard to get him to meet the expectation that he's having difficulty meeting, right? What we're doing right now is we're learning that he is lacking a lot of skills as well, and that those are contributing, but in ways that are not precise, just that they are contributing, right? And once again, when will we know what's really getting in the way? And we won't talk about this one with him tomorrow because he doesn't know me, and this could be a slightly embarrassing one. But when will we know what's making it hard for Joshua to wipe himself after going to the bathroom? When we ask him. Let's move on to the next lagging skill. Poor sense of time.
Yes.
Now I'm going to ask this in a slightly different way. Are there any unsolved problems that spring to mind on poor sense of time that we haven't talked about yet?
I'm not sure if I'm going to word this right, but
Don't worry about wording, that's my job.
he has no sense of understanding that there are time commitments. Like when you have an appointment, you have to be there at a certain time, and that we have to get there. It takes time to get there. That we have to be in the car at a certain time to be able to be at our appointment.
How do you know that that's what he's conceptually having trouble with? Does he say, I mean, how do you know that that it's the concept of it takes time to get there in the car, or are you mostly saying he's having difficulty getting to certain things on time? Is that what you're trying to say, or does he not even appreciate that we got to take the car and that the car takes time?
I don't think he can even appreciates that. I'll say, you know, he'll say, why are you rushing? You know, or I'll say, Joshua, we need to get to your dentist appointments at 2:00, and he just doesn't seem to understand what that means.
I'm just going to write that as difficulty getting to the dentist on time,
Okay.
right? I don't usually write appreciating ever
Right.
in the unsolved problem because I don't actually know if he's having difficulty appreciating. I'll find out if he's having difficulty appreciating when I ask him, but in the meantime, I'd rather word it that he's having difficulty getting to the dentist on time. It's much more, no assumptions in there,
Sure.
right? No theories,
Mm-hmm.
just he is having difficulty getting to the dentist on time.
Mm-hmm.
We're not actually exactly sure why. Do you agree?
Sure.
Difficulty getting to the dentist on time. Others that spring to mind on difficulty with time, and I'm assuming there's other things, I shouldn't assume once again. I got the feeling that there's other things he has difficulty getting to on time. Is the dentist it, or are there other
Oh,
things?
getting ready for school
Getting ready for the bus.
Which we've got.
in the morning.
on the van.
Got,
Anything time related.
Yeah, getting to bed on time, getting, you know.
so that we've got,
Yep.
so, good. So is the main facet of getting to school on time, just trying to see if we
Being ready
have
for the
it.
van.
But is that mostly related to getting dressed?
Getting dressed, eating.
Do we want to split those, or do we just want to refer to that as, because I don't think we have we talked about difficulty getting ready for school on time yet? I don't think so.
No.
I don't have that written down.
No.
Difficulty getting to school on time. Now, if we wanted to, we could split that into the different things that are comprised in getting ready for school, and whether he's having difficulty with each of those. So that could include getting dressed. Is he having difficulty eating on time, or is that just because the whole thing is running late?
Just because the whole thing is running late.
I'm going to go with difficulty getting to school on time. Good, we can always split it up once we're doing Plan B as well, as you'll see. Any others that spring to mind with that one?
Can't think of anything else.
No.
Let's keep going. Difficulty maintaining focus, which we've already heard.
Yep.
Does anything spring to mind that we haven't talked about yet? And as we're seeing, if we'd have done difficulty maintaining focus first, we might have come up with a bunch of the exact same unsolved problems, right? But what would have led us there? Difficulty maintaining focus, right? And the things on that list are no particular order. It's just they're in the order they're in. All we care about is what skills is he lacking, what expectations spring to mind because he's lacking that skill without precision. Does anything spring to mind on difficulty maintaining focus that we haven't talked about yet?
giving him a couple things to do.
Hmm.
He starts out in a direction to do one of those things, may or may not get the first thing done, but is walked off in a totally opposite direction of getting the second thing done.
So for me to make that one more specific, I would ask, what things is he having difficulty getting done?
I guess we've talked about it, actually.
All of them? Or are there like chores that we haven't talked about?
No, we've kept his chores pretty
Yeah,
simple.
Yes?
yeah.
So nothing else springs to mind on difficulty maintaining focus that we haven't talked about?
Correct.
Difficulty, you told me this one already. Difficulty considering the likely outcomes or consequences of his actions. Do we want to check that one off?
Yes.
Yep.
And anything spring to mind? Now that's a little bit different than some of the other ones we've talked about. Anything spring to mind on that one that we haven't covered yet?
Considering his, I guess, understanding that when he says scary things in front of other children, they're not going to want to play with him. Would that be considered in that?
Let's think about that. And truth is, I've already got difficulty considering the likely consequences of his actions checked off. So we're good to go, right? And that's something you thought of that made you think of, okay? I'm still good to go, right? Now all I got to worry about is wording it. Even if I'm not sure that that's the lagging skill that's contributing to it, you've already told me he's impulsive, so I feel comfortable checking that off. Now I got to word it though. He says scary things to his friends. That's a behavior, and I'm not going to put behavior in. What expectation is he having difficulty meeting when he's with his friends?
Appropriate social behavior.
Still a little vague. What is it what's the expectation for how he'll interact with his friends so he doesn't scare them?
Safe behavior, safe.
We could just go with difficulty playing with his friends in ways that don't scare them. We could put difficulty saying things to his friends that aren't scary. I'm a little funky on that one because it's still budging a little bit close to something he's doing that we don't want him doing.
Can I give a little example?
Sure.
We're at a camp. He was at a campground playing with the kids that he plays with once a week.
Yes.
A friend of mine who has 6 kids, and he plays with them. And they're at the campground. There's a little girl playing on this playground, the swing set, and he says, "I want to kidnap that little girl. I want to kidnap her." So they had to speak to him about, we don't talk like that. That would scare her. But those are the kinds of things he says on a weekly basis.
Like things I want to kidnap her.
Yeah.
I want to kill somebody.
Yeah, you might say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we want to word that? What I like to do is get away from the behavior. If we went with the behavior, it would be difficulty not saying he's going to kidnap people in front of his friends, which I'd rather not do if I can avoid it. And I try to avoid not unsolved problems. But what is it that we want him doing? Do we want him speaking kindly to other kids?
Yeah.
Does that cover it?
Yeah.
Difficulty speaking kindly to other kids on the playground.
Yes. That's good.
That's always a hard one. That comes up with swearing, but what we're really looking for is the kid to be speaking kindly to other kids on the playground. Now, that doesn't mean, if we introduced that to him and said, Joshua, I've noticed that you're having difficulty speaking kindly to other kids on the playground. What's up? He may not know what we're talking about. And we'd really rather word the unsolved problem in a way that he does know what we're talking about. So we should be ready with an example, like when you tell kids that, like, you want to kidnap them, right? So we've got the examples handy. We just don't want to roll with the example because a lot of kids think they're in trouble if you start with the behavioral example and then they won't talk to you. Any others spring to mind on difficulty considering the likely outcomes or consequences of his actions?
Impulsively pulling my hair when I was driving, I'm thinking of that particular behavior.
The
Doesn't
one that you were telling
understand-
me about?
Yes, so understanding that that's a safety issue.
But I would call that an aftermath unsolved problem.
Because it came after the.
Another unsolved
Okay.
problem, right? So that's in the heat of the moment.
Mhm.
And I don't, generally speaking, what a kid does in the heat of the moment, number one is behavior, but number two is the aftermath of another unsolved problem, and that's the one I really want to get at,
Okay.
right? So in the car, it was the dentist unsolved problem, yes, that led him to get all upset, that led him to pull your hair. I'm gonna leave that one off, unless he's pulling your hair outside the context of being angry about something else.
Yeah, no.
No. Do you see what I mean, though?
Yes.
What we, we don't really want to be working on what the kid is doing in the heat of the moment. We want to be working on solving the problems that are causing the heat of the moment in the first place, right? So we're not looking for sort of it wouldn't be this. Joshua, what's a good plan for what you could do instead of pulling your mom's hair when you're upset about going to the dentist? We don't want to do that, right? We've noticed that sometimes it's hard for you to go to the dentist. What's up? That's what we're working on. Then he's not pulling your hair downstream because we
Sure.
solved the problem that's upstream.
Sure, yeah.
Good?
Yes, makes a lot of sense.
Any others that come to mind? Let's keep going. Difficulty considering a range of solutions to a problem. Do you think that's true?
I think that's true because he only thinks of one solution, and the solution is what he wants.
Yep. My way or the highway. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah.
And
So I feel comfortable checking it off.
Yeah.
Any unsolved problems spring to mind? Any expectations that he's having difficulty meeting spring to mind as it relates to difficulty considering a range of solutions to a problem?
Maintaining emotional control because he's so upset about
Something.
something.
The unsolved problem is the something that he's getting upset about. So again, it's a good example of, yeah, I get it that he's getting upset, right? We don't want to work with him on getting upset. We want to work on solving the problems that are causing him to get upset. So I get it, what you're saying, but I want to know, and this is me pushing the canoe upstream, right? Getting upset is downstream. The problems that but he doesn't get upset over nothing. The problems that are causing him to get upset are upstream, and we have identified a meaningful number of them, right? We'll see how many more there are, but do you feel like we are covering, in terms of your thinking about what does Joshua get upset about? Are we covering a meaningful percentage of them so far?
Yes.
Yep.
That's good, especially since we've only covered
A
4,
third.
5, 6, a third of the lagging skills, right? But here's what starts to happen, and that's why I've been asking some of these in a slightly different way. Because multiple lagging skills could contribute to the same unsolved problem, it is possible that as we move along, we will be checking off lagging skills, but not be able to come up with a ton of additional unsolved problems, because it's just that these are the ones we're getting to later. So early lagging skills, in most cases, tend to be top-heavy with unsolved problems, only because they're the ones we asked about first. If we started from the bottom up, the bottom ones would be the more top-heavy runs, right? But it's possible. But as we go along, the process often speeds up. Many people are sometimes sitting there going, geez, it's been 45 minutes. We've only been through like 8 lagging skills, right? But the process does tend to start speeding up as we cover later lagging skills because we've already covered the unsolved problems that we would have thought of with those lagging skills. But let's keep going. Difficulty expressing concerns, needs, or thoughts in words.
I think he does have some difficulty with this, but it's not as difficult as some of his other problems.
But you do think that he sometimes has trouble putting his thoughts into words.
Yes.
Yeah.
And are there any unsolved problems that spring to mind that we haven't talked about yet that makes you think of?
We find out later that he was anxious about something or worried about something that he didn't tell us, so just his behaviors came out, but later on we found out it was because
Got
he
it.
was concerned or worried.
So I like this. I like them all. Tell me what some of those things could be. Because I want to put it in terms of a situation that's making him anxious so that we have something to work on.
Not wanting to go to VBS, which is Vacation Bible School.
Difficulty going to Vacation
Yes,
Bible School.
saying he didn't want to.
More.
Said he didn't want to.
No, not on that one.
Okay. Oh,
Other
okay.
expectations that you would say he's anxious about it and we don't know it.
Horses.
His horseback riding. Although I hate to say this, but I think we knew it. I mean, we knew
Yeah.
at the time.
Does he still have difficulty going to horseback riding?
We haven't gone in several weeks, but not as much.
I'll keep it.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
he still have difficulty going to Vacation Bible School?
Yes, because he said he didn't want to go.
Yep.
Got it.
Again, even though
Got
we
it.
get there and it's okay.
And so the reason this is a slightly tricky one in terms of wording
Mhm.
is we could put difficulty telling mom and dad that you're nervous about going to Vacation Bible School. We could put that. But I think we're going to get at that, maybe, I could be wrong, when we talk to him about difficulty going to Vacation Bible School, right? So the tricky part is, what I'm trying to decide is him telling you the thing we mostly want to work on, or first of all, do we want to split it? Do we want to have one difficulty telling mom and dad that you're anxious about going to Vacation Bible School and difficulty going to Vacation Bible School? Or do we think that difficulty going to Vacation Bible School is what we really want to talk to him about? So it's either or both. What do you think?
I guess difficulty telling, because you
Yeah.
want him to be able to feel
Right.
like he can say what's on his mind.
Got it. Got it. Any others spring to mind on difficulty expressing concerns, needs, or thoughts in words?
Well, getting on that van with the other student. Was anxious about that.
He didn't have any difficulty telling us, though.
No, it's true.
He told us very loudly he did not want to take the van to school.
Got it. But
So-
does he have difficulty taking the van to
Yes,
school?
he does.
Yes.
Got it.
Mhm. Yeah.
See, here's the interesting thing. I get it that that's not one, to tell you the truth. I don't know if he's having difficulty taking the van to school because he's having difficulty expressing his needs, thoughts, and concerns in words. And I don't care. It made you think of it. I'm glad to know he's having difficulty expressing his needs, thoughts, concerns in words, and I'm glad to know that he's having difficulty taking the van to school. Good? Any others spring to mind on that one?
I can think of right now.
Let's go on. This one, everybody that I work with gets checked off. Barbara too. Difficulty managing emotional response to frustration so as to think rationally.
Yes.
So that one's like almost guaranteed, but, and some people would say, why keep it on there if it's true of everybody? Because it helps people see what's really going on, right? A lot of people who develop checklists would say, if it's true of every kid, then it's a meaningless item. It's not a meaningless item because the lagging skills are actually helping us understand what's getting in the way. I'm glad we checked it off. Anything spring to mind that we haven't talked about yet on that one? Any expectations that he's having difficulty meeting that spring to mind that we haven't talked about yet as you think of him having difficulty managing his emotional response to frustration so as to think rationally?
I think we talked enough about it.